Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Podcast. And as usual, I'm joined in my completely updated avionics-wise cockpit by Awesome. You know him as Austin Ward. Awesome, welcome once again to the Tim May Podcast cockpit.
Thank you. You can't send college football and Tim May Podcast news around the world without a plane. So
True.
Glad to be along for the flight, as always.
Yeah, and like I said, it's updated with the latest avionics, so we're bound not to get lost unless the satellites fall out of Earth orbit. But I digress.
We don't get lost. We just take detour digressions. That's fine.
Bingo. You know, the digressions. You know, well, if I could, I don't know. I was thinking about them as I was flying back from Houston the other night, and I'm just going. You know, the digressions are what make life interesting. You know, once you get there, you got there and you go, well, wait a minute, the trip was a hell of a lot more fun. But I digress. Draft just happened. I've got a young man coming on named Jake Ballard. Ohio State fans remember him as the Statue of Liberty pass-catching tight end from the Rose Bowl. As a lot of people said, oh, that guy can catch the ball too, you know. Well, the New York Giants were paying attention, you know, signed him as a free agent. As I referred to him as a draft pick early in the interview, but I mean, I knew all along, he didn't get drafted. He's one of those guys who should have gotten drafted, which is what we're going to get into in the second part of this podcast. But real quick, just hit me a little tease here. What was the biggest development, do you think, Ohio State related to the 2021 NFL draft? Something that hit you sideways, either really good or really bad?
I think it was just the capper to the Justin Fields saga that was really, all right, well, this is done. And the way it ended, I think that people will look at this and you hear the punchlines. Ohio State doesn't have success in the NFL level, and Justin Fields is going to Chicago where they don't have NFL success either. That's not going to work. Like that stuff, that doesn't even matter to the Buckeyes because they've now had a second first-round draft pick in 3 years at quarterback.
Yeah.
So you're going to have probably more of them because of that. What matters to high school recruits is becoming a first-round draft pick. Whatever happens after that is up to the NFL coaches, the right fits, however they decide to handle their work ethic and all that stuff. That's out of Ohio State's control. Where they went to college no longer matters. But for a 4 or 5-star recruit, for a Quinn Ewers, for somebody in a following class, seeing that Ohio State can get that Ryan Day, that Kevin Wilson, that Corey Dennis can get these quarterbacks into the first round, even if Justin Fields slid, he was the number 11 pick of the draft. Most people would kill for that opportunity. It's on a life-changing money and a situation where he can go maybe, change history for the Chicago Bears. I think the gravity of that for what it meant for Fields, Day, Ohio State's program, and then the future of the quarterback position, which as we talked about on pretty much every episode we've ever had, or any conversation we've had, if you don't have that guy, it's much harder to win a national championship or impossible. So that's sort of like, and the fact that it was just over after all the nonsense we had to hear, I think that was significant, even though there's a lot of other things we could talk about.
Yeah, I was going to say, if people aren't paying attention, the last 9 years have taught you that if you're the Ohio State starting quarterback, you're probably going to eventually win the Chicago Tribune Silver Football Award, which is MVP of the Big Ten, or you're going to win a national championship. Cardale Jones, his brief stay at the top, as the starting quarterback at Ohio State, included winning a national championship. And, the last couple of drafts have proven you're probably going to get drafted. And and you're going to set records along the way. J.T. Barrett, great example. Dwayne Haskins Jr., great example. And, of course, Justin Fields. And, yeah, I think Justin Fields went to the right thing because, we're going to cover him right now. He got drafted to the right team. He slid to 11. Back in the day, man, you're 11th pick in the NFL draft. That's a big deal. Exactly. I mean, no matter where you go. But he's going to a place where they desperately need a quarterback. And, man, the hoopla that created in Chicago, probably more hoopla than when he moved to Ohio State from Georgia. When you think about it, I mean, they really think he's going to take them to the promised land. I mean, I think he really landed in a great spot.
Yeah, and I think won over a lot of people that will be loyal to new Bears fans, I guess I should say, that want to follow Justin Fields and were really impressed with the way that he handled himself. the fight to bring back Big Ten football. Maybe it's fitting that he's going directly now into Chicago after what happened there and the petition and all that stuff. I think, who's to say? I watch the NFL, but I'm not in that day-to-day life. I don't know if it's a great fit. I don't know what their offense does. I really can't sit here and honestly say, like, well, there's a good chance he'll win there. I don't know. I thought that Washington and going home was going to be good for Dwayne Haskins. It turned out it wasn't. He's still really talented, and I think that a second chance in Pittsburgh could be just what he needs. But that's back to what I was saying earlier, Tim. Like, Ohio State can't really be concerned about that. And if people want to badmouth them because of that, there's nothing they can do. All they have to do is say, well, they're first round picks. We changed their life, or help them change their life. They didn't do it by themselves. Justin Fields, Dwayne Haskins were really talented before they arrived and certainly were when they left. But you and I have both said that we felt sorry for the way that worked. And it's really crazy, as you said, that somebody could slide to 11. Like, you have to be rated in the top 10 for that to be true in the first place. So it was just a bizarre couple of months, and I'm really glad that it's over for us, for him, for everybody. Yeah.
Bottom line is he's a first round draft pick, not just first round, upper 1/3 of the first round draft pick. And what more can you ask? When you're sitting there, when you're 15 years old and you want to play college football and in the NFL, that's pretty damn good the way I look at it. And it's a beauty contest, my guest I've got coming on, Jake Ballard, he talks about, just the vagaries of the whole pro situation of making a team. You can be better than the guy who they've got already in a position, but the pro teams are a lot like families in the sense you get favorites, when it comes to players, and you stick with them, even though you may bring a guy along who might be better than that guy. It's all about, basically making people feel comfortable with you and vice versa. So, without further ado, let's get to my interview, my little talk here with Jake Ballard, and we'll come back and we'll chop up who our surprises were from the Ohio State draft, other than Justin Fields situation, and maybe who's coming down the pipeline, otherwise known as the transfer portal, possibly for Ohio State. As promised, ladies and gentlemen, having a little guest spot here with one of my favorite people. Now, Jake Ballard, I say that about a lot of people that come on my podcast, but you clearly are one of my favorite people, man. We not only have talked together before Ohio State games with our buddy AR-15, otherwise known as AKA Anthony Rothman, the last couple of years before Ohio State football games on that tailgate show, but we even played some golf together, man. And as people know by now, who are paying attention to me and my podcast, but more me and my me and my Twitter account, I refer to you as Crankenstein. But welcome to the Tim May podcast, my man.
Well, I really appreciate it. Yeah, man, we're teammates in the tailgate show, and even more importantly, teammates in the golf realm with the outings and the scrambles.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not kidding. This guy hits the ball as far as Happy Gilmore. I don't know how far he would hit the ball if he had the approach that Happy Gilmore took to his drives. But when we were playing in a scramble a few weeks ago, this guy hit a 198-yard 9-iron. It was with the wind, but within 8 feet of a hole, R5. That is correct, isn't it, Crankenstein? I mean, Jake?
That's true. Blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while, but we did sink that eagle putt there. So we won't talk about the size of the hole in the Easter outing. But.
Yeah, well, let's just leave it at this. The Easter Bunny definitely could have found that hole, but we digress, right? Hey, but real quick, I wanted to get you on, man. I want you to talk about, the draft is over. You're a guy with a Super Bowl ring with the New York Giants and stuff. My point is, you got drafted. You paid the price to play in the National Football League. Actually, you end up paying pretty much the ultimate price, which was you get injured and you get gone, after a while trying to come back and stuff. But what are these guys that got drafted over the weekend from Ohio State? What's that sort of that next step that they're going to have to adjust to in the game? I know it's been a few years since you were in it and about a decade since you actually got drafted or more. But what's that next step for these guys that they have to adjust to?
Yeah. Well, first off, so I went undrafted. I was getting calls in the 6th and 7th round, but nothing ended up happening. But then I signed right after the draft. Had a couple teams wanting to get into me, but I've been around in the NFL and been around enough guys who got drafted first round to last round. So I'm pretty familiar with the whole process. And it really just depends on where you're falling in the draft, right? You know, if you're a first round guy, usually most of the time the guys I've been around, you're pissed off because you didn't go higher, or guys were drafted before you that you thought you were better in. AKA you have Justin Fields sitting there at 11. And the good ones, the great ones will use that, you know, energy and emotions and to feed the fuel and the fire and to really, you know, take their team or their talents to the next level. But for everyone else, you know, you're sitting there on draft day. When I signed in draft day, it was multiple days just like now. So, you know, I didn't have very high expectations. Obviously, I didn't have that many receptions at Ohio State. We had a nice running quarterback my junior and senior year in Terrell Pryor. Won a lot of games, but, you know, I was getting some talk from the Patriots. The Patriots were talking to my agent saying, listen, we really like you. We think you're a sleeper in this draft class. We know you can block. We think you're more athletic than people think. And if we don't draft a tight end early, you know, we're probably going to try and get you late if you're still available. So I was like, well, that's awesome. And I talked to my agent and was like, is this legit? Is this a legit thing?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, there no nonsense around there. So, you know, I'm watching the draft and second round rolls around and who do they take with the first pick in the second round? Rob Gronkowski. Okay, well, probably won't be getting drafted by the Patriots. And then sure enough, guess what? In the fourth round or fifth round, they take another tight end named Aaron Hernandez. So I'm like, well, I'm going to cross that off the list. Sure enough, after the draft, they still wanted to sign me, but I knew I couldn't fight for a spot. They had two high caliber tight ends. I'm going to be on the practice squad at best case scenario.
Yeah.
So that's what led me to the Giants. But, you know, it's such a day of emotions for these kids in the unknown. You don't know where you're going until it happens. Like, you might have an idea, but then it's like, oh, well, you know, like me, I thought I could go to New England. Well, then I'm going to the Giants. Or you have some guys who might think, oh, I'm going to go to Carolina. Then you'll be out in L.A.
Yeah.
They just don't know. And for being football players in college at Ohio State or in general, you're just used to routines of the known, right?
Yes.
I have the season. Monday's my off though. Monday's my off day. Then I'm training, practice, Tuesday class, all this stuff during the season. Then spring ball, you have your schedules. Now it's like, I don't know what happens next.
Yeah.
It's very anxious and it's intimidating.
Yeah, you know, I referred to you as getting drafted, and that was a faux pas, brain fart on my part because you made a team and you won a Super Bowl. You know what I mean? And I mean, I think most people, when you look back on your career, they think, "Wow, that so the Giants were smart, man. They got in there and got in on it." But you're right. I mean, you know, if you don't go in those first, what is it, 4 rounds, or what's the feeling? First 4 or 5 rounds, you may get a signing bonus 6 and 7, but you're going to be fighting just like that free agent, right? I mean, you were a free agent signing. Go ahead.
Well, it's pretty known. If you're obviously first through 5 rounds, you're basically guaranteed a spot on the roster for a year. You know what I mean? If you're higher up, maybe even more than that, because, you know, front office guys have a lot of ego. They don't want to look like dummies.
Yes.
By cutting somebody that soon. I remember there's a guy, I won't mention names, but I guess I will. I don't care. Linebacker in New York, drafted in the 4th round, Philip Dillard. Solid guy from Nebraska, had all Big 12, all that stuff going on. And come into the second year, they cut him out of training camp. I don't even think he made the second cuts.
Wow.
Cut him. Wow.
Yeah.
That was kind of unheard of. But if you're a 6th and 7th round guy, it does not matter. They do not care. You have to compete, and you got to earn your spot. Otherwise, you're getting taken out with the garbage if you're not earning it.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing about the lower end guys now, there's been this resurgence too for guys that make less money to balance off the guys that are making the more money on rosters, right? I mean, that's the numbers game they deal with more than just the roster, who's on the roster. It's like, what are they making and stuff. And so, you know, it's just a weird time, isn't it? Do you think for these guys, for the NFL, I mean, for the guys who are fighting for roster spots?
Well, yeah, because it's like you said, it's more than just a playing ability. It's okay. Well, we got a young cat who we think we have confidence in. He's shown it enough, but you know, we have some older guys who bring leadership, experience, the locker room, but they're making this much money. We can get the same talent out of this guy. So then you weigh all these immeasurables, like a guy like Kurt Coleman. His last year, he got brought into Buffalo and didn't play much, played special teams. It was his 10th year. So he's set for life with health insurance, getting that 10th year in. But they could have brought in a younger guy, cost less money, but Kurt's leadership and ability to step up and want to play special teams and do a great job means more. It meant more to that program.
Yeah.
Buffalo. Yeah.
Well, hey, take us through though. I mean, after you sign, after you go to these OTAs and stuff. I mean, I'm not sure what the OTA situation is like. This year again with the COVID situation, and we all know last year was really weird. But what do they expect from you from a team standpoint? What are you sort of? What will these guys sort of in general be required to, like you were talking about, your days at Ohio State when you're working out there, and of course now with Mickey Marotti and his program and stuff, but your days were literally etched in stone, weren't they? I mean, right. Monday, how different is it for the pro guy now between now and the start of training camp, just in general terms?
So with the COVID stuff, there seems like they're putting the decision on the players whether they have to go to voluntary off-season workouts. But if guys are really dedicated to getting better and improving as a team, they're going to be there. And it sounds like it just depends on the organization. But as rookies, when you get there, it's going to be very structured. It's going to be almost like college. It almost feels like you're a freshman. You do feel like you're a freshman again.
Yeah.
You're going to have a schedule where you're staying, food, at least for the most part. The places I was at, that's how it was. Now it could change from organization to organization, but it's very structured. You have to be there. You're spending long days at the facility, training, lifting, meeting with your coaches. Now that's different with vets. Vets aren't doing that as much because they've been around the block, but rookies, it's the same thing. And the whole courtship, like you said, before the draft, coaches are calling you, oh, we really like you. You get there, and it might be 5 minutes of that, but then it's a business.
Yeah.
These coaches' jobs and livelihoods are on the line, and they're going to get after you. And the good coaches will be able to, coach you up on the field, off the field, in the meeting rooms, without absolutely tearing you apart all the time. But it's definitely a wake-up call. And just getting used to the new systems, the new environment, the new coaches, it can be tough for some of these guys. Luckily for me, I went from, a Tressel guy to somebody who I think is a little similar to Tress and Coach Coughlin.
Yeah.
Very 5 minutes early. All the clocks are set 5 minutes early. It's Coughlin time, just like we used to call it Tressel time.
Yeah.
And he'd come in the morning. We'd have our team meeting, talk about some things. And the one thing that sets Coughlin apart a little bit from Tress is he didn't shy away from tearing you apart, tearing you down. Publicly, get after you, and I respected him for that a lot. But it's definitely a wake-up call. And then, not to mention, throw in the fact that now you're in the same locker room as NFL greats that you were watching play when you were in junior high. Maybe some of these guys, right?
Yeah.
I walked in the locker room. There's Brandon Jacobs, Kevin Boss, Eli Manning, Maude Bradshaw, and I'm just like, this is crazy. Keith Bullock was on the Giants my rookie year, his last year in the league. I'm like, I played with this guy on Madden 2004.
Yeah.
Now it's fast forward to 2010, and he's still playing.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, like, guys are on Tampa Bay right now, who are younger than the years Tom Brady's been in the league. I mean, that's nuts when you think about it. It's nuts from both sides of it when you think about it, But
right.
I wanted to ask you, go ahead, though.
I played with Tom in New England.
Yeah.
Great guy, but the minute you walk in there, you're just like, man, this is so intimidating. I watched this guy win a Super Bowl in 2001.
Yeah.
I was 13 years old, and now I'm in the same locker room as him.
What was he like, though? Was he a demanding teammate? If you follow my drift, how would you describe him to somebody? I mean, I mean, I'm not saying he was a coach on the field and stuff, but he's kind of got this rep that, he wants everybody around him to be as all in as he is. I mean, how would you describe, your interaction with him?
I'd say that's pretty spot on. Tom is a great guy when I was around him. He made an effort to get to know everybody on the roster, whether you're number 2 behind him or number 90 about to get cut and do go out the spinning doors of New England as their front office does at times. But he demanded a lot of guys, but he also had the walk and the street cred to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And he put in all the extra work, and he expected you guys too. I mean, it would be after OTAs, OTAs would be done. The practice would be over. Tom would want to throw a bunch of extra balls to receivers. So you got Julian Edelman out here running more routes, Wes Welker, Gronk, me, Aaron Hernandez. Like right after we just got done with an hour and a half practice, and New England's not known for easy practices, if you catch my drift. And he's out there slinging it, and he expects a lot, but he also is doing a lot. You see him in the facility all the time. He's watching film. He's in the weight room. He's working his TB12 thing, getting worked on. So when you have a leader like that, the top showing the guys the way, it's easy for guys just to fall in line and do that. It's pretty similar to like the stories I hear about, Bobby, AJ Schlegel when James came in as a freshman, kind of just fell in that group and shoot, I'm going to do what these guys are doing. And it paid off. I mean, obviously James put in a lot of hard work, but in the same thing when Ross Holman got in early, he started bobbing Schlegs and all the guys are still around, and he just followed suit and it pays off.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, when you do get that chemistry going, you do get that climate going in your program. It is a sight to behold. The interesting thing, Bill Belichick talked to the coaches, the Ohio State football coaches convention, at Ohio State several years ago. And he made an interesting point. He goes, one of the toughest things that a head coach in the NFL has to foster is preseason camp, everybody being team oriented, meaning trying to get better for the team, when in fact, half of those guys working out know they're going to get cut. They don't know necessarily they're going to get cut. Yeah, but half of them will get cut. Right. And you were in those kind of that's what I was going to get into with you. You're trying to take, when you go in as a freshman, when you go in as a rookie, you're trying to take a grown, as Urban Meyer said, a grown ass man's job. This isn't like walking into Ohio State where, the senior tight end is going to take you under his wing, and because he knows he's going to play and you're going to learn the game unless you're a superstar. Explain to me, talk to me about that camaraderie, that you try to foster, yet you're each trying to get each other's job.
Right. And it's intimidating, man. But I think playing at Ohio State, you play against grown men. Even though their birth certificate might say 21, 22, 20, you're playing against the best every day. Now it just gets a little more intimidating because you don't know these guys. You don't know the status quo, right? In practice and summer practices.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of a buddy system sometimes. And if you're an undrafted guy like me trying to make a splash and also not piss off the old guys, it's tough. Like, you're going to get friends, but then it's like, you got to get after it. And so when I showed up in New York and we were doing OTAs and we wouldn't have pads on, we'd have our helmets on, it was like full go. And I was going to show, I went in there and they had Kevin Boss and Travis Beckham, who he was my guy, but he was a Wisconsin Badger, and I'm seeing him like the enemy, right? Even though we're not close to the same tight end. He's a receiving tight end. He's 6'3", 240. I'm in there at 6'6", 270. It's not the same thing. Yeah. But anyway, once the helmets are on, we were practice. I was going to show these coaches, I don't care who you put in front of me. I'm going to block the crap out of them. So, I didn't make very many friends out the gate, but I was making splashes because they saw I could block better than anybody had on the roster. Kevin Boss was a big athletic tight end. He could block, but he was more a receiving guy. He was serviceable in the blocking game, but I was actually moving guys that they weren't used to seeing get moved or get locked down. Like I was locking OCU Minora as a pass pro and then moving, holding my own against Justin Tuck. And honestly, when Jason Pierre-Paul was a rookie, he wasn't as polished as he is now.
Yeah.
The crap out of him. I don't think he was used to it in the what were they, Big East? They had Big East when he was playing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And they weren't used to seeing tight ends who could block 290-pound DNs.
Yeah. So, it's kind of like going from high school to college for him.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes in it, but like I said, you guys not give a crap. Those guys have made it. Jaden Pierre-Paul is a first-round draft pick. He's guaranteed 3 or 4 years at max. If he's a bad player, and then you got veterans who've been there. They don't have to kick ass during summer OTAs.
Yeah,
I have to. So it's a do or die, or you'd be on the streets soon.
How much feedback did you get from the coaches then? I'm talking, the guys that were leading the workouts, how much did you lean just pretty much on what they were telling you, no matter what anybody else was griping about this Rudy guy? You know what I mean? Remember the Rudy deal where, hey, you're making us all look bad, But who did you find out you could lean on for the true word about what was happening, about where you stood, et cetera?
I was pretty fortunate. I had a great tight end coach with New York. His name is Mike Pope, and he was, lifer NFL tight end coach. He coached Mark Bavaro in the 80s for the Giants. So he was like the second longest tenured guy in the Giants organization as a tight end coach. So he knew how it worked. He knew, and he just would tell me to keep. He's like, I don't care what these guys are telling you. You got to keep going. You're making a big splash and opening people's eyes. And so I relied on him. And then also Charles Way, he was our player development guy. He played fullback for the Giants in the 90s. And he was I really liked him a lot. He also was in charge of the rookie meetings. And he would just keep telling me, he's like, hey, keep going. He's like, we're going to have a spot for you. We haven't seen this happen in a tight end position in a long time. So that in its own kept me going, and other players would respect it, and some of the old guys would get pissed off, but they also know it. They know what life's like for young rookies who don't have a signing bonus. They understand you're trying to feed your family, quote unquote, or take care of yourself. So it's hard for them to get too mad, but it's all part of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, that old who was that? Not John Matuzak. Who was it in the movie? When we call it a game, you call it a business. When we call it a business, you call it a game. That old soliloquy, and that is kind of what it felt like a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. And it's not in the NFL. You're waking up, nothing was guaranteed. Every day it's not like college, right? You're, like you said, you're true freshman on campus. You're guaranteed. As long, besides getting arrested and doing bad things off the field, you're going to be there for 4 or 5 years, guaranteed.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what you do on the field. If you're a flop, as long as you're doing what they ask you and being a good team player, you're going to be there. But if you don't have time for that, you can't afford to put multiple mistakes in plays in a row, much less multiple bad practices overall. And you got to learn quick. If you make a mistake, you can't show those guys that you make the same mistake because they pay attention. You got eyes. All eyes are on you from the facilities and the organization. Even people you might not think, they have a say, like equipment dudes. They keep track of how you interact with them. If you treat them like garbage, if you're a low guy, low rookie, you might be undrafted or just here for tryouts. If you start treating these guys that you think might not be able to do anything for you, you'll find out real quick, hey, we don't like, we're letting you go. You've been really disrespectful to a lot of people in the organization. They just be like, what? No, I haven't. Not realizing, yes, you were. Yeah. You're not treating the cooks right or nutritionists or whatever it might be. Everybody's watching you. Everybody's evaluating you, and you don't even know it.
Wow. Yeah. That's crazy. Think about in college football, if you're a prima donna superstar, you can get away with a lot of things. I would think you could do that in the NFL too, but when you're that guy that's grunting to make the team and stuff, it's that's interesting. Hey, real quick too, I never asked you, and we never talked about you being an undrafted free agent. I presented this earlier with you being drafted because I just felt like in my head, this guy won a Super Bowl, he had to be drafted. And as you got into talking, I go, Timbo, I even call myself Timbo when I'm thinking in my inner voice, you dumbass. He was an undrafted free agent. But real quick, though, how did you handle like meals and stuff? How did you stay nutritionally fit, you know what I mean, before you make the team and stuff? It's all on you to a certain extent, right?
So you're talking about pre
making the team,
Yeah. So unfortunately, I signed with a pretty good agent in Blake Barrett's out of Minnesota. He's Institute for Athletes. He's actually representing Tommy Togiai and Rashad Bateman. Kurt Coleman had him as well, and a couple other Big Ten, Reed Fragel. So, he was an experienced agent, and he knew this was, it's ride or die time. And he he provided us with meal plans and a nutritionist to send meals to our house.
Really?
Yeah. So for a guy like me, he saw me in the Rose Bowl play. I was undecided. Seniors were able to talk to agents back then. I know they can now a little more, maybe even younger. I don't know the rules. But so I was talking to a couple. He wasn't even on my radar. He saw me play in the Rose Bowl, him and his partner, Barry Gardner, who played Northwestern stuff. Yeah. And Barry was like, this tight end is killing people on the line. He's running up and down the field wide open. Why are they throwing him the ball? And he was freaking out. And they were just there to watch Kurt because they already signed Kurt. And I guess Barry kept saying in the stands, throw the tight end the ball. And then eventually when I made the catch in the Rose Bowl, he's like, turned around to all the people in the audience, and it was all Buckeye fans. He's like, I told you, I've been telling you guys to throw him the ball the whole game. And I met them after the Rose Bowl and ended up hanging out with them after the Rose Bowl. And the rest was history. But they were able to, send me meal plans. And at the time, Eric Lichter, the strength coach of Ohio State, he was pretty known for combine training. He was the best in the country. So he's like, what good agents will do, they'll evaluate who you're training with. And if they think it's better to move you to, like a place in Arizona or Florida where it's more specialized, they will. But we didn't feel the need because Lichter was right here. Right here in Columbus. And that's what we decided to do.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
I was finishing school, training with Lichter, and just doing diets that way.
Gotcha. That's interesting. Because I think everybody has a different way of going about it and stuff. I didn't realize that about your agent, basically setting you up in those respects. I just figured he said, hey, I'm going to get you a good contract. Hey, go back to the competition thing though, because, like you said, top 4 or 5 rounds, you're probably going to make the team in some capacity. You're going to special teams, you're going to be on the team and stuff. But is it like a 24/7, like you were talking about the equipment manager keeping up with how you treat him, blah, blah, blah. Did you feel like the microscope was on you 24/7? How would you explain how the scrutiny from the standpoint of actually feeling it?
I didn't feel like the microscope was on me when I wasn't on the field, when the eye in the sky don't lie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just felt, I was more of an introvert. I'd lean more towards introvert and very quiet usually. So I don't know anybody. I'm tired already from getting my butt whooped and pushing it every day. So, I didn't feel like the eye was on me all the time. Yeah. And I treated people like I always treated people. You know what I mean? I tend to appreciate being around people, and there's no reason to be mean. And I don't take advantage of people who, I try, that's just who I am. I'm not tooting my own horn. So I think it paid off. I became friends with a lot of the guys who weren't football coaches. I was friends with all the equipment staff in New York from the very beginning. We connected on our love of like Nike and Jordans and gear, and they were just good dudes. And even when I would go back, sometimes I'd go back to Jersey when I was in New England, just to stop by the weekend and see some guys. And I'd walk in the Giants facility like I was family. Like I was on the Patriots, but they didn't care. I mean, let me in. I'd see guys. They'd give me a bunch of Giants gear. And I guess like what I'm saying, I didn't feel like that. But you find out the longer you're in that's how it really is. People, they get to know you when you're not on the football field. They see how you interact with people who can't do anything for you.
Yeah.
And it goes a long way, especially if you're a fringe guy. Now, like you said, if you're a superstar, Larry Fitzgerald could have been the biggest jerk he wanted to be.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have mattered. He'd have a spot, but he's not. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet.
Yeah.
Everybody loves him. And he didn't have to be. But that's just Larry's ingrained that way.
Yeah. I mean, I remember meeting him when he was still in college and talked to him for like 30 minutes. I just go, this guy just talked to me like like I've known him for 25 years, and then I just go, yeah, and the thing that carries you a long way, man, good or bad. I mean, no matter what happens to you on the football field, you're right. It carries you a long way. Hey, real quick, carry us through your career and stuff. Update people, just in a succinct fashion. You're doing okay. Boom. Everybody remembers seeing you get your knee injured. It's kind of famous. You danced on that knee later that evening, though, didn't you? I'm trying to remember.
I didn't quite pull the Gronk where he was dancing with his. But
remind people, you're on the Giants. You're in the Super Bowl. Go ahead now.
First year, signed with the Giants, up and down practice squad to active roster all year, depending on if Boss got hurt, if he didn't. Eventually, in November, they just put me on active because they thought I could help out. I ended up only playing a couple games, was on not IR, but inactive for games. Second year, it's the lockout. So an opportunity where I'm supposed to be able to train with the team all year to get better and better was not available. I was back to Columbus. I didn't have any way to make money. I made a decent amount as a 23-year-old human being, but I didn't make, active roster money. So I trained all off season, got back. We didn't have an off season. So I got back to training camp, reported for training camp. And fortunately, it helped that I was on the team and knew all the plays since then. You know what I mean? And
yes.
I'll never forget, we had our first day of practice. Kevin Boss wasn't there. He was in contracts with Oakland and New York. And he was about to come back to New York on a 3 or 4 year deal worth, I think, close to $10 million. Well, Al Davis out in Oakland said, we'll double it. So he went to Oakland.
Wow.
I'll never forget, Coach Pope came in. He's like, Kevin just signed with Oakland, and we're not signing any tight ends. It's going to be somebody in this room. And I took that. I was like, it's going to be me. I don't care what's happening. So, that year I ended up earning the starting spot, started all year. We went to the Super Bowl, won the Super Bowl. I got hurt in the Super Bowl, tore my ACL on the field, tried to run on the sideline because they told me it wasn't my ACL. Ended up getting hurt worse, cartilage damage, the whole 9 yards, So I was all off season rehabbing, yada, yada. Right before training, mini camp was over, they ended up wanting to put me on IR and cut me. And they're like, well, we know you're not going to play this year, so we're going to put you on IR. Unfortunately, though, we have to cut you. You have to be on the waiver wire for 24 hours, and then you'll go to IR. And I'm like, me and my agent were pissed. They're like, somebody could claim you, stow you away for the next year. You're a young, talented tight end, and you don't cost much money right now. You're still on the first undrafted contract. And they're like, no, it's kind of an unwritten rule. Unwritten rule, no one will claim you. And I told Jerry Reese when I was sitting in front of him, I was like, listen, I love being a Giant. I take a lot of pride in this, and this pisses me off. Let's hope to God I don't get claimed by someone else. He's like, no one will do that. So the next day, I'm not allowed to go to the facilities. Well, rewind. So after I had that conversation with Jerry Reese, Coughlin was out doing – he wasn't even in town. He called me so hot, so pissed off. He's like, Jake, I can't even tell you how mad I am that this is happening. We love you here. You were a big reason for our success last year, and you're a smart kid. I don't get all the calls. But let's just, he's like, I'm going to be praised. Like, I'm going to be praying to God that no one picks you up and be a Giant by the end of the day tomorrow. And I'm sitting there like, I'm still 24. I'm a young kid. I'm like, oh, coach, that won't happen. I want to be here. I love being a Giant, yada, yada. So I'd go home. Next day, I can't even go to the facility. So I'm just hanging out thinking nothing's going to happen. Ronnie Barnes, the head trader, calls me. He's like, hey, come to the facility. And this is minicamp, last day of minicamp. Coughlin wants you to come in, just watch practice. I don't think anything's happened yet. So I get ready to go in. I go and I'm watching practice. I think I just started walking again. Anyway, I'm talking to Ronnie Barnes like nothing's happened. Then this little runner for Jerry Reese comes over and looks at Ronnie. He's like, "Did you tell him?" And tell me what? And Ronnie's like, "I didn't tell him." And he's like, "You'll never believe it. New England claimed you in the last 5 minutes of the waiver wire."
Wow.
Like, no way. Not possible. He's like, "Yeah." And my heart just sank. I got sick to my stomach. I called my agent right away, told him. He's like, "No, they haven't." I was like, "I haven't got a call from anyone. I can't make this up." I was on the phone with my agent when a Foxborough number started calling him. So he's like, "Hold on, this is Foxborough number. Call me. I'm sure. Let me talk to him." Sure enough, it was. Slowly but surely, all the players on the field started finding out that I was no longer a Giant, and everybody was coming up to me, getting pissed off. Coach Pope was shaking his head. Coughlin was trying to finish practice. His face was beet red. Just you could see it.
Wow.
And he, the owners came over to me and, "Jake, we love you. You're going to be fine up there. We just don't even know what to say. We can't believe this happened." And I just wanted to be like,
wow,
"We told you it would happen. We told you." And
wow.
Coughlin just couldn't talk, and I was sick to my stomach. And then, all the players just came up to me like, "It doesn't make any sense. There's 90 roster spots." And for everybody who doesn't know, if you go into training camp and get cut, you go straight to IR. We were the last day of mini camp, so that's the last thing before training camp. If they just would have kept me until training camp, moved me over to IR, it would not have happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the guy that they made room for was a 12-year D-tackle vet that wasn't going anywhere. So
Yeah.
It literally made no sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they got played, was on a plane to New England the next day, went up to New England, sat out all 2012 season, rehabbed. Come into 13 off-season training. I'm running around. But like I said, their off-season training is not easy. And I'm coming off a bad knee injury. And mind you, Gronk is hurt. So he's not practicing. Mm-hmm. Aaron Hernandez, I think, had shoulder surgery. And then eventually that whole story goes to jail.
Yeah.
So I'm the guy.
Oh, wait a minute. Because of jail. I like the way you summed it up there. Go ahead now.
Jail. Anyway, so I'm the guy taking all these reps.
Yeah.
No, they're supposed to be working me and easy. They're not. My knee's filling with fluid. I'm getting 50 cc's drained every other day. So I'm just –
dude, yeah.
I'm horrible. I mean, I'm just feeling terrible, hating life. And eventually, I make it to the end of the training camp. The first 3 preseason games I start, do decent. But then the 4th preseason game, which is a telltale, I didn't play until the second half. So I'm like,
wow.
I'm cut. And it was against the Giants, so humiliating.
Wow.
And so they cut me. Nick Casario, who's also – he's like the GM for Africa. He's not in New England anymore, another GM somewhere. They call me up. He's telling me the whole thing, bring your playbook. I'm like, oh, this is terrible. Bring my playbook, get cut. Nick Casario's talking. And then Bill was like, Nick, I'll take this one. And I respect Bill for this. He said, Jake, you've done everything we've asked you to. We've loved having you here. You're a pro's pro. You're a smart kid. You know your knee's not where it needs to be yet. And we think it's better in both of our cases to go in separate directions. We're not closing the book. You just might need a couple more months of rehab.
Yeah.
Well, that was done. I went and rehabbed for a couple months in Minnesota. Felt like I was the best I was. So then I went to start doing tryouts, tried out for the Chiefs. They were about to sign me until they took an x-ray of my knee. And then they backed me up. They changed their mind. And then I ended up working out with Cardinals. They loved me, but they said they didn't have a spot for me yet. They had a rookie they drafted from Rutgers, who was a 5th-round guy. Well, sure enough, that next week, that guy got a DUI. He got cut. They called me, signed me. Played for the Cardinals for 8 games, had a couple touchdowns, started a couple games, then signed another year with the Cardinals. And then 6 days into training camp, after a really hard summer workouts, I retired because I just could not take it anymore with my knee.
Crazy, isn't it? I mean, it's crazy. You're having the moment of your life in the Super Bowl, and boom, then you get back, sitting back in there, them telling you it was not the ACL. Well, telling you it's probably,
not only the ACL, right? Yeah. Oh yeah, not the ACL, right? Like you said.
Yeah, yeah. But then
I think it's your meniscus.
Yeah, but then of course also I think you ended up with microfracture surgeries. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, and that doesn't always work for a lot of people. And that's what kind of was your final undoing, wasn't it? The microfracture.
Yeah, my legs are strong, the ACL's strong. It's the cartilage damage that I suffered. You do the microfracture surgery, they drill into your bone to increase blood flow to try and get blood to heal and put a surface of cartilage over, but it's never going to be, your cartilage as slick or as
smooth. Yeah.
Smooth, right? Cartilage is, I think, 10 times as slick as ice. So like it's supposed to be moved easy, right? So now I got this area that's defect that's hampering my ability of cutting, running, blocking, and I also had a meniscectomy. So I mean, with my knee, so my meniscus was gone on my medial side of my left knee. I was bone on bone, and I pushed it through for 2 more years, but I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah. I mean, football when the Reaper comes, he comes, doesn't he? I mean, it's crazy.
Fast. When you're a rookie, and I was lucky to Ohio State. I didn't have major injuries. Some soft tissue pulled hamstrings. Never missed games. I think I missed 1 game against, I don't even remember, Illinois or a half. I played the next week anyway. And I'm a rookie and seeing all these vets, 10-year vets, older, throwing icy hot all over their body before they get ready to go do a simple walkthrough or an OT.
Yeah.
I was like, I'll never be that guy. Fast forward 3 years later, I'm getting a facility first. I'm in the hot tub, then the sauna, warming up my legs in the weight room before going out for practice. And I'm like, this is not it.
Yeah. Paycheck. I mean, yeah. But so that's what I'm getting to. I want you to tell that story, because that's what these guys, right now you're going in young, dumb, and, full of energy. I'll make it full of energy. Follow my drift there. But it's important to just make the most of whatever as fast as you can, right? I mean, because nothing's guaranteed, so to speak, right? Is that what you tell these guys? What would be your message to them?
Yeah, I'd say, concentrate as much as you can on it because nothing is guaranteed. It doesn't last forever, and get it while you can. So when I see guys sit out for contract talks, I'm like, great. The NFL is a multi-billion-dollar industry and one of the biggest in the world. They're going to get yours, and your window to make money right now is so small.
Yeah.
So you got to do everything you can to benefit and take care of your body.
Yeah, maximize. Hey, how fired up were you to see Luke Farrell get drafted? I mean, he went earlier than a lot of people thought. I mean, you're a tight end guy. You're an alum from Ohio State. I mean, there's a little camaraderie there, right? In one fashion.
I was really happy for Luke. I've had a couple conversations with him. I think I met him a long time ago when he was a recruit. I was on the sidelines for a game. I think Jimmy Cordell was even a GA, and we took a picture together. But I was really happy for him. I mean, I was a little surprised, but evaluating, Luke's a big guy. He can hold his own in the run game. He's athletic enough to be a tight end in the league. I could see him doing a sneaky 8 to 10 years career in the NFL, and even becoming a starter and making a name for himself, kind of like similar to what I did, because he's going to show up. He'll be able to block anybody you put in front of him for the most part, better than most tight ends in the league. Most tight ends get rode off in the blocking game, and he'll be able to stretch. He's a 4.7 guy. In the 40, he'll be able to stretch the seams and run downfield and go up and get it. So the tight ends who can handle the blocking and the receiving are far and few between nowadays. And NFL demands that out of at least one guy on the roster. So
right.
If he can keep that going, he could turn it, like I said, an 8, 10, 15-year career because it's needed position.
I was going to say, I call the one tight end that they feature, I call him the sweet tight end. But you got to have that at least one other guy, no offense, but kind of like you were, they'll get down there and get down and dirty, but can still do the other stuff, and probably one of the more valuable people on an offense, period, in my opinion. I always saw that as the role for him. I talked about it for the draft, that he's a guy that could do it all. And it reminds me of you in a lot of respects. Who got drafted that just from Ohio State that, you think is, other than Luke, that could surprise some people down the road? I mean, obviously Justin's going to be probably a starter by the middle of the year, if not sooner, some of these other guys, but who's a guy that just jumps out at you?
One guy that I think went way late in his great value is Tommy Togiai.
Yeah.
I think he's going to go in there and wreak havoc and make a name for himself. And people can play the what if game. Like, oh, if he would have came back, he might have been a first or second round pick. Well, he also could have got hurt.
Yeah.
So you can't do anything about it now. Like, I think General Carpenter said on his Twitter, he's like, you just got to look forward. You know, he can't change it. And things happen. Sometimes guys slip depending on the need of certain teams and the value they have on guys. So I think he's a great value. I think Trey Sermon is an unbelievable value for a third-round pick. He could be the guy right out of camp in San Francisco. So, I mean, I think those guys jump off the page. Otherwise, you know, Pete's a second-round guy, so that's no surprise there. He could be starting pretty quickly. I think Baron Browning's will be potentially fight for a spot later in the season, if not earlier. Oh, and another guy, Wyatt Davis. You know, Wyatt dropping as low as he did. I don't know if it was due to injuries or what, but I wouldn't be surprised if he walks in there and starts. You know, after a couple weeks of practice.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I he was my on our we make these bold predictions, and I said, you know, you kept hearing how he was not going to be a first rounder, but I didn't think he would drop like he did. But I go, this guy's going to be in the league 10 or 12 years minimum if he stays healthy. You know, his grandpa's Willie Davis, you know. I mean, I got his autograph way back in 1964. We were at the Green Bay Packers camp. We were visiting from Alabama, you know, and everybody was in this big line for Bart Starr, and I went and got Willie Davis's autograph, you know, but he was but I mean, my point is, the draft just gets you in the league, you know, one way or the other. You know, like people are disappointed that Justin Fields dropped to 11. I go, you were the 11th player taken in the draft by a team that needs a quarterback. You know, how more, you know, you're not going to make as much money as Trevor Lawrence the first year. And that's what's really whacked is how the money falls off the cliff, you know, as the farther down you go. But flip side, you were the 11th player taken in the draft, you know, go for it. You know, Tom Brady was in the 6th round, for God's sakes, you know, and, but it is amazing. The disinformation campaign that started on Justin Fields was crazy. And anyway,
everything you would hear on him, oh, he doesn't have enough tape. I mean, he played 2 years old, the top competition in the country. Meanwhile, you know, the guy from North Dakota State had played in 1 year in one game last year. And you're going to take him, you're telling me Fields doesn't have enough tape? He had 2 games this year that were a little below par. But guess what? Who cares? He has enough tape. I mean, I don't know how you take him over Fields. I just
I was stumped, but you know, NFL teams do that kind of stuff, man. And you kind of think it's a lot of people have a wrong idea about the draft, like they're just picking the top 250 guys in order of how good they are. No, that's not what they're doing at all. You know, like I said, you only got to sidle up to 1 or 2 teams to convince them to take you. You know, you don't play the whole field and stuff. But I think that's going to backfire on San Francisco big time, especially if Garoppolo play, you know, I'm not sold on Garoppolo anyway as being a Super Bowl champion kind of quarterback. Number 2, he's been banged up, and that's necessarily no fault of his, but they all of a sudden are stuck with Trey Lance in the middle of the year. You know, wow. Good luck. Now, he may end up being the next great player, but
we're not rooting against the kid, but like you said, he played what, 14 games in Division 1A
FCS
football, FCS football.
FCS football. Of course, he's running over guys at the goal line. They're this big.
Exactly.
Yeah. Hey, Jake Ballard, you know that you and I both know that you have all these other stories that I want to get into one of these days, or not one of these days, several of these days on the Tim May podcast, because I think people like hearing about what goes on behind the scenes. You know, stories at least you can tell and not get you in any big trouble, if you know what I'm saying. But you're going to come back one of these days with me, aren't you?
Yep, anytime, my man.
And people don't know this, but I'm trying to put together. I'm going to be your manager on the long driving league, because I'm telling you, we got a shot to go all the way, brother. Don't you think?
I think there's a shot. I just need that extended driver that those guys have, and let's roll.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going to be the coach. My coaching tip is going to be this: hit it farther. That's what my coaching tip. But anyway, hey, we're playing golf later. Yeah, we're playing golf later this week, man. I appreciate it, and we'll hook up. All right.
All right. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Jake Ballard. Hey, man, Krankenstein, as they call him, awesome, otherwise known as Jake Ballard, man. You ought to watch him hit a golf ball, my friend. And I'm serious about that long driving contest stuff. We're going to hit that tour. I'm going to be his manager, a.k.a. Key grip, whatever you want to call it, because I think this guy can go places. But
I've heard the tales, and I think there might be something to play in that tight end position because
yes.
I've heard the exploits of Ballard. Last year, Jake Stoneburner played with our team when we went out and finished second in the Roosters event, and he goes off number 10 at Dublin, hits it 375 first swing of the day down the middle. Long drive hole, it's already over. He's won it on the first swing. And Will Crawl, my boss, played walk-on tight end. He can also absolutely match the driver. So I guess we missed the boat, Tim. We should have played tight end.
You know, they must – I think they might – with Kevin Wilson being a tight end coach now, you got to figure they take 30 minutes out and just go to the driving range, don't you? I mean, that's part of his day. I know that, man. But, yeah, you're exactly right. I'll tell you what, I'm 67, and the interesting thing is I've never hit the ball farther than I do now, you know. And, of course, that just tells you how far I didn't hit it way before. But it is crazy, man, how, you know, technology and whatever. But I'm like I said on the interview with Jake there, the most impressive thing was the 198-yard 9-iron he hit with the wind at this scramble we played in a few weeks ago at Clover Valley. Nice golf course, man. And on a par 5, and we hold the putt for an eagle. I mean, he hit it within 8 feet. That was the most amazing shot he hit all day, you know. Matter of fact, we played some of my drives. And, you know, because Paul Spahn and I, we're above 65. So we got to play from the yellow tees, which we didn't know we were going to get to do. And we both hit the ball pretty well, you know, when we hit it straight. But I digress real quick. You know, he made good points. But the main point I wanted to talk to you about was, you know, he, like many others, or at least many other people I know, is scratching his head about San Francisco taking a guy in Trey Lance. And this isn't knocking Trey Lance. Trey Lance is, from all opinions, is a great guy, great talent, whatever you want to call it. But he was a starter for 1 year at the FCS level, didn't play last year because the FCS took the fall off because of COVID. And they take him with the 3rd pick in the draft when they could have had what I call a possible plug and play guy in Justin Fields. I mean, like right out of the bat, I mean, Trey Lance is a project. And Justin Fields, yeah, he's going to have to learn things, but you could put him in there and just say, you know, run certain plays and he could run them right now. I don't know. What do you think about that? I mean, what does it tell you once again about the vagaries? That's the correct term of the NFL draft.
Well, I think back, I think what immediately comes to mind is that when these guys that have all gone through this draft process that we've talked to for years and years doing this, they say, well, it only takes one team to fall in love. And it doesn't matter if you're considered the second best prospect or this or that, or other teams have you. You know, there was a report over the weekend once the draft was over that 8 out of the 32 teams had Justin Fields above Trevor Lawrence. Now, was that right or wrong? I don't know. We've had our issues with what people with that, you know, in the NFL draft circles have been reporting for the last couple of months. So yeah, I'll take it with a grain of salt. But the point is, you know, San Francisco traded up to get a quarterback that I don't know if anybody else would have wanted in the 3rd spot, just because Justin Fields is so proven. So the fact that they did that before the draft, and then generally NFL teams are so risk averse and wanted, you know, they turn over all these stones so they get the most sure thing. Part of the reason that Justin Fields slid was because they had more film and they looked at 2 games that they were concerned about without any context for still winning against Indiana or playing against Northwestern without his best receivers against a defense that was pretty talented. I think they were 3rd in the country. Yeah. Total defense, had a 1st-round draft pick at cornerback, and they were content to force Ohio State to run the football. You know, all that. What we've talked about that a million times. But they had more film on Fields and then picked that apart. If he hadn't played last year, if Justin Fields had stayed opted out, you cannot convince me that he would not have gone number 2 overall. I don't believe it. So
if you're going, wait a minute, let me interrupt. If you're going to take a video and judge 2 guys off of it, the Ohio State Clemson game, you know, which quarterback would you have taken from that game? I mean, if you just judge it off of that, a guy, not just a guy that was in fuego, was on fire in Justin Fields, but got the crap knocked out of him and came back and played not just the game of his life, the greatest bowl game performance, in my opinion, in Ohio State quarterback history. It's just go ahead though. You can see, here's the thing, you can justify anything you want.
That's right.
Stats and video if you want to. Now go ahead.
But if you have that film of the Sugar Bowl, what do you have from Trey Lance that is even remotely comparable? There's nothing wrong with playing at a lower level. I watched Josh Allen at Wyoming, and I knew for sure that was an NFL talent quarterback. How the Cowboys wound up lucky enough to have him, and the way that all played out. Hey, sometimes things happen. Trey Lance, the same thing, lightly recruited, didn't have that many options to play quarterback, and then he made the most of it. You give those guys a lot of credit. NFL players can come from anywhere.
Yes,
and that's one of the great parts about it for people who work hard and make the most, maximize their talent. That's great, but the concern about Josh Allen, and we've seen what he's become, was he's doing them against Mountain West level competition. Well, that's still higher than what North Dakota State is facing on a weekly basis, and we know that program has stepped up and beat some teams at the FBS level. They've won a ton of championships. But you got one season of film you're working with, and none of the teams that he played were Clemson in the college football playoff. Yes. So I just don't. It won't ever make sense to me. But that part of it is over, and we'll see who's right. I would bet much more on Justin Fields being a success, even if it's Chicago, than Trey Lance, and that's my personal opinion.
Right up until San Francisco announced his pick, and I know the news that had come out that they were down to Trey Lance or
Mac Jones.
You couldn't get two more different guys than those two guys. Those are your two guys, and you can't get any more different. I mean, if that's true, then probably Justin ended up in the right place, because that sounds like a place that doesn't have a clue what he wants to do with its quarterbacks. Like they want to get Jimmy Garoppolo and Tom Brady. You know what I mean? Yeah, and they didn't get either one. I mean, I'm just perplexed by it. Let's move on. I think Justin's going to land in the right place. Is going to do fine at Chicago. That's not rooting for a guy because he's from Ohio State. I just think this guy's upside is huge. The epilepsy thing, he addressed it. Didn't make a big deal about it. Didn't say he's going to become a spokesman, for dealing with it. Basically said it popped up, when he was like in middle school, and he dealt with it from then on, why that had to come out before the draft is beyond me. Obviously, the Chicago Bears totally comfortable with that situation. The stuff that came out about him that was totally bogus, he just let that roll like water off his back, because once stuff like comes out and then you refute it, what are you left to do? And if people at that level who supposedly are doing all their research and that's what they came up with, you don't want to play for a team like that anyway. I mean, because who the hell are they talking? Well, I'm not going to get into who we think they were talking to, because that's casting aspersions I don't know about. But you know what I'm talking about. We've already talked about
educated guesses.
We've already talked about peach basket, so we'll move on from there. NFL draft is over. Who was the most slighted Ohio State player in this draft, and who was the most beneficial player in this draft? If in fact I even put that correctly, I stammered because I wasn't sure how I was going to put that. But to make it quick, who was the most slighted player in this draft? Ohio State wise.
Going to steal your answer. It's Wyatt Davis. The end result is that all these guys got selected. They have homes that are probably going to be good fits for them. Once you get into those third, fourth, fifth round picks, I mean, those teams are drafting, to try and fill out their roster with spots that are potentially open for competition. And we both know that Wyatt Davis has the ability to go in there, a healthy Wyatt Davis, by the way, and start from day one and never leave their lineup. So
yeah, let me interrupt you. That's what that's obviously what Jake Ballard pointed out. He thinks this guy could be a starter game one. If in fact, we don't know truly about his health. Something there was a flag for the NFL, and they didn't take him early like I thought he should. I'm not saying would, but should have been taken, because I really do think he's going to be your 10 to 12-year starter minimum in the NFL if he stays healthy. But go ahead.
And I can't remember if it was the first round or second round when I was sitting there, we're waiting. We're covering the draft as much as fast and furious as we can over the weekend. And I heard it out of the corner. Did they say that guy tore his Achilles at the Senior Bowl and he's off the board before Wyatt Davis, who's already on the mend? And so that's what you've talked about with, you never know what one team is going to value or another. So if they were concerned about the knee and another team doesn't care that somebody would miss all of rookie camp and mini camp and training camp with a torn Achilles, they had to have him. So, there's never any way. You and I were texting about that over the weekend. It doesn't make all that much sense to us. Of course, the prospects that we are most familiar with are the ones that we see every day. But I think Wyatt Davis, just historically, the guards that we've watched, develop, play, practice, perform, he's one of the best that I've ever seen. And I think that he'll have a long career. And the same is true for Josh Myers. He didn't slide quite as far. I would lump them in the same category as guys that could have gone higher, that are potentially day one NFL starters. So they just wound up being good value. I mean, that's the flip side of the coin.
Yeah. But, blows your mind, though. These guys, these were two stalwarts on the Ohio State offensive line. It was right up there, rival to one of the best in the country. I mean, you can debate it, whatever, and you're going, so like you're talking about, and then they draft these guys you've kind of like not even heard of or sort of not heard of, and you kind of go, these guys, man, played at the highest level and were road graders. When Ohio State needed a saving grace against Northwestern, when clearly Justin Fields was not on his A game, as he admitted, and he was missing Chris Olave and Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think, was missing in that game. And these guys, like I was pointing out in the first half of that game, Wyatt Davis and Josh Myers were owning the offensive line. And finally, turn around and give the ball to Trey Sermon, let him run for 331 yards, most of it in the second half. How hard was that? But my point is, what are you looking at? When it finally comes down, these guys are football players, man.
Right.
I mean, they're not just big names on a big time school. They're football players. That's what drives me crazy. My pick for a guy that got his just dessert and probably could have been taken higher, but somebody opened their eyes, and it's really funny who did. It was Urban Meyer and the Jacksonville Jaguars. But when they take Luke Farrell, I think as Jake Ballard pointed out, that guy could be in the league 10 or 12 years too. I mean, he's that kind of player. He blocks great at the point of attack. He can run really good routes. Was in the 4.7 range, I think, in his 40. Can catch the ball if you throw it to him, which is the big F, for tight ends, especially at Ohio State. Don't you agree? That was a guy that he maybe went higher than some people projected. I thought he was almost a steal in the 5th round. What do you think?
I texted
whatever round he went. I'm trying to remember. It was 5th. Yeah.
I texted somebody close to that Farrell camp after that pick, and congratulations to them and the way that Farrell developed in the fit that he's got there with Urban, and said, I guess they don't need to sign Tim Tebow anymore. And the response was, yeah, Tebow can chill.
Yeah,
that was one of the funnier subplots, because only Urban Meyer could have been interested in that, I think, with trying to bring Tebow back at this stage. But he knew that there was a guy sitting there who he recruited, who he watched become one of the best blockers, and knows what that offense entails, knows that he can also catch the football. When you talk about Ballard's catch, Luke Farrell had one just like it with the post up in the Sugar Bowl.
Yep.
He can do it all. That was a great fit. That's a great pick by you and by Urban Meyer for a guy who, again, fits in that value category and is pretty much ideal. Like, if you're building around Trevor Lawrence or he's the foundation for Urban Meyer, you have to surround him. I thought it was weird that they took Travis Etienne in the 1st round, but you could tell as they went along that they were trying to, a strong tight end who can block and catch if you need him to, some weapons that he can work with, an offensive lineman as we went along. But I think that Farrell is going to be a really important asset for Trevor Lawrence there.
Yeah. The thing that bothers me about Travis Etienne, but, in the NFL, different people have they got Carlos Hyde sitting there. I think they feel pretty good. But the thing that bothered me about Travis Etienne was how he kind of disappeared as a running back, against Ohio State the last 2 years, against a team that really can play some run defense.
Yeah.
But, especially 2 years ago, he made some ridiculous plays out of the backfield as a receiver. And, so yeah, that one, that was a head scratcher because I think they could have gotten him in the second round, be honest with you.
Well, Jacksonville is just coming off of the year where they had an undrafted free agent rush for 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
And that's not, plus Carlos Hyde. So there were two running backs there. I guess all of us here will be paying closer attention to the way Urban Meyer his transition to the NFL and the way he builds his roster than maybe we would normally pay to what's going on with Jacksonville. But especially.
Let me interrupt you. It would catch my eye no matter who did it if a team took two players from the same school in the same first round. That has to catch your eye. And it was the two skill guys. You know what I mean? That's what got me. But it also is an insight into what he kind of has in mind offensively, in my opinion. Look out because they're going to throw the ball to running backs out of the backfield. Is maybe a lot.
Yeah, and that's not what you're going to use Carlos Hyde for. So
no.
It's interesting. I don't know. I still don't know what's going to happen for him down there, but it was fun to just, see Urban Meyer in that war room and the picks that he made and, the way that you and I, the time that we spent around him, how his brain works and what he thinks. Like, I just know that he probably thought about the Fiesta Bowl and the way that Travis Etienne, finished that game, and he never, ever forgot about it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And now he's in a position where he doesn't have to recruit these guys and he might lose.
Yeah.
If he wanted Travis Etienne on his team and he didn't care that it was a first-round pick and he might be able to get him later, he wanted to guarantee that he got him, and so he did.
Now, I'm going to answer this question first, and then I'm going to make you take another one.
Okay.
Of the Ohio State free agent signees, who's going to make the team? My pick is Justin.
Don't do it. No.
That's what I want to get ahead of. Because if nothing else, he is a wedge busting, go down there and make the tackle on special teams demon, and then he will work his way. I mean, I could see trepidation about drafting him based on his medical history, even though if you look the last year and a half, he's been sound as a pound, as they say in jolly old England. But I'm not sure the pound is that sound anymore, but you know where I'm going with that cliche. But the bottom line is there's the guy who has the goods to make the team and then maybe show them what he can do at linebacker. Now, your choice.
Wow, you did a number on me there.
Drew Chrisman, man, I'm telling you.
Chrisman, yeah, I would say the next in line. It's the guy's got great athleticism. I was just going to say punting ability. That's obvious.
Yeah,
he punted for a long time at a high level. He's a good athlete, and you got to have that once you go to that next level up. It's you moving around, doing different things. I know we're just talking about a punter, but that position has become more complicated and more elaborate with some of the punts that you do. I'm just listening sometimes to Pat McAfee talk about what they're doing and the ball placement on the foot and the spin and all. I started maybe paying more attention to that when Cam Johnson was around.
Yeah.
And then Drew Chrisman kind of, he did his own thing for several years at a high level. And, he's going to be familiar with the situation down there in Cincinnati. And I'm sure that they wouldn't have signed him to that deal as quickly as they did if they didn't view him as someone who could potentially win that job this summer. Yeah.
Plus he can flip bottles for a living. I mean, here's the thing about him. I just like him, I like him. And then he's got this ability, to do things. And plus he's an interesting dude, so best of luck to him. And really all the Buckeyes that signed national letters of intent, that signed undrafted free agent contracts, because, like I said, Jake Ballard, my guest this week, is a great example. If you go in there and bust your butt and show them what you got, show them why you should make the team, you're not really going in there to be buddy with anybody, because the guy that's sitting next to you may be competing with for a job. This isn't a scholarship where you're going to be on scholarship regardless. You're competing for a job. You just put your head to the grindstone and go for it, and play at that college football playoff elite level. You've got a great shot no matter who you are. Real quick, speaking of that, before we go here, because we only got a couple more seconds here. Actually, we already ran over our time, but you know how it goes. This is sort of an timed event.
When it's finished, it's finished.
Yeah, when it's finished, it's finished. Yeah, there you go. I like that. I may use that is my final quote here in a minute. But transfer portal, what's going to happen? I mean, what do you see coming down the line? Is Ohio State going to get the kid from Tennessee, 2020? Do I pronounce that close to correct?
I think so. I'm not the go-to to get every name
linguist.
right.
You're not the linguist, yeah.
Although I try my best because I know how important that is.
Yeah.
It's a 2-team race. I think there is. Ohio State feels very comfortable about what it's done, what it is presented. I think it's complicated anytime when we're still in the midst of this shutdown period. So it's not like he's been able to go get into the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Nobody's been able to do that or won't be able to until June 1st. And certainly he would be more familiar with what Alabama has to offer. Just having gone through that from his recruitment and maybe making a decision that he regretted the first go around going to Tennessee. Yeah. But the depth chart is certainly something that has resonated. I know that Al Washington, since the moment he could contact Henry 2020, has developed a strong relationship with him. And really, it seemed like when that thing started, it was Alabama and that was it. So the Ohio State, the fact that this is a true sort of 50-50 situation and the Buckeyes feel like they have a shot at it, a legitimate shot at him coming to Columbus, tells you how strong the message and the relationships have resonated with him. In a 50-50 shot, I wouldn't want to put my money betting against either one of these programs when it comes to recruiting. I just think that Ohio State, when they're starting to talk that way behind the scenes, when you hear some of those whispers, usually a good thing happens. And the fact that they might need to win one might redouble their efforts with Jameson Williams now heading down to Alabama, which that one comes as a surprise. I know that you're asking about a guy coming in.
Yeah.
But this was something that developed pretty recently with Jameson Williams. People have asked you and me both, going back to signing day in December, like, how is Ohio State going to keep these all? Like, who's going to transfer? I think deep down, if you'd said in March, yeah, Jameson Williams might be the one, even though he was the third guy last year. The other guys were pushing, but he had a great spring. The people I talked to inside the program raved about the way he went about his work. They were extremely happy with what he did, the strides he made. There were not signs in March or through the middle of April that Jameson Williams was unhappy or looking to leave. This is something that seemed to come about much more recently, and who knows exactly what was said, why it was said. He's not going to get as many touches, and then you start listening to other people about your NFL future at this time of year.
Yeah,
maybe that's that happened late. This is not something that was building, and it did come as a surprise to Ohio State the way it worked out.
Yeah, too bad, because that guy had finally gotten to that point. We saw him have a few struggles along the way. Like, for example, against Northwestern, it was sort of his moment.
Yeah. And
maybe didn't rise to that occasion and stuff. And but Marvin Harrison Jr., I just keep telling people, oh my goodness. I mean, stays healthy. Wow, that guy, the upside on that freshman is crazy. And then you throw it in there with a mix with Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. I mean, even Emeka Egbuka. Wow, that guy caught everything they threw to him in the spring game, including maybe the best catch in the spring game. Crazy. Julian Fleming, stepping back up, right on down the line. It's just, everybody can't play, man. That's the bottom line. And sometimes you get the message. And if you get a great opportunity with another great program, why wouldn't you take advantage of it?
Yeah. And look, this is the deepest wide receiver room in the country still without Jameson Williams, which tells you a lot. So if this was going to happen, it's much better for Ohio State. And I don't mean it to sound as cruel as maybe that came across. They have the depth to absorb the loss of Jameson Williams, which is crazy to think because we know what his ability is. He's another top 100 4-star player. He's scored in big games. He caught a touchdown in that Sugar Bowl blowout. He's a very good player. Otherwise, he wouldn't be going to play at Alabama.
Yes.
So it does hurt to lose Jameson Williams, but also it maybe doesn't even change Ohio State's depth chart that much. If you're going into March, a healthy Julian Fleming, I think, was starting to inch ahead of Jameson Williams. That's, the things that you and I are hearing about his ability and his potential. So, that has to play into his mind as well. Like, what's going to happen? I think Jameson Williams was somebody who thought he'd be a 3-year and out to the NFL kind of guy. He wasn't ready for that, and he was going to have his hands full staying in that talented rotation. So he made a move that he thinks is the best for him. And I think even though Ohio State is disappointed that it doesn't get to finish off that development with him, because they certainly view him as an NFL player at some point, I think they can understand why that decision was made, and they know that they're still going to be okay. And then maybe it'll help their numbers in the long run. Yeah,
I had somebody ask me, who's the take the top off the defense kind of guy for Ohio State? And I go, well, if you watch Chris Olave play he gets open, and he may not be as fast as I think he's extremely fast. He's sneaky fast. Garrett Wilson, we haven't really seen him streak a lot. He wants to be considered faster than Chris Olave. They got some capable people, but the main thing is capable people that get open and then catch the ball. The key phrase, get open and catch the ball. And if CJ Stroud or whomever ends up being the quarterback, wow.
Like I said, who's going to take the top off the defense? Like, have people have they really not remember? Like Chris Olave, all those plays that he made in the game,
just look at the Clemson kid. Yeah,
he's just gone. Okay, there was no top of the defense because it exploded.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was like potpourri everywhere. But I digress. Hey, always appreciate you coming on and being right-hand seat there when I have to take bathroom breaks and things like that while we're flying this plane. Appreciate it. Awesome. As you know, real quick before we go, it's really funny. CJ Stroud was not listed on any Heisman or any kind of Heisman talk or best quarterbacks in the country a month ago. Now he come out of spring and now people are projecting him. It goes back to what I was talking to you about. The Ohio State quarterback, it's a pretty good position to be playing these days, right? I mean, as soon as they name a starter, that guy's going to jump up on any kind of betting lines, or whatever you want to call it. It is interesting what first Urban Meyer, now Ryan Day have created.
And it goes back to what we talked about at the start of the show.
Yeah.
When you send a Dwayne Haskins, no matter what happens after, when you send Justin Fields, no matter what happens for him with the Bears.
I'm talking about them as college quarterbacks. That's all I'm interested in. Yeah. Yeah.
But so when you become that attracts guys like CJ Stroud, who could start anywhere in the country. Jack Miller, I don't think he'll win the starting job here. 90% of the programs in the country, he's going to be a starter in the first couple of years on campus. And we know what Kyle McCord is capable of. Yeah. So all these guys, the point was that they know what they're signing up for. And Ohio State is getting guys that you can put in, and they may be ready to do it in 1 year, where in the past it was a longer process to learn the offense, get comfortable with the speed of play. Ohio State's not dealing with developmental quarterbacks really anymore. They are getting college football ready, starting quarterback.
Plug and play.
Quarterbacks ready to go.
Plug and play. That's my key phrase for the day. Plug and play.
Plug and play. We'll lean on that one.
If you just keep things simple, for example, for Justin Fields from the start, and then incrementally move it up with the Chicago Bears, he's gonna produce, man. I mean, he's already shown he's got the toughness, he's got the arm big time, and he's got the feet to get him out of problems when they develop. I mean, you see what I'm saying? Yeah.
Remember what Ryan Day said leading up to the Heisman ceremony for Dwayne Haskins. That he's a first-year starter. He'd broken every record, and he said, well, we've got about 60% of the offense in for him. Like, that's at the end of year one, and he was about to become a first-round NFL draft pick.
Yeah.
And I think part of it was because he wanted him to stay and finish that development and go one more year, not just for the sake of the program, which would have been incredible for Ohio State, even though we know what happened afterwards with who replaced him, but that, there's a lot that you learn in year two. Justin Fields didn't even get that full second year in the traditional sense, thanks to what we know happened in 2020. But, now, because of what those guys went through, because they were able to take their talents and assimilate into that offense so quickly, that will only help a Stroud, a Miller, a McCord, a Ewers, or whoever else down the road. Like, Ohio State's not going to be bothered at this point to, let's take a shot on this 3-star and maybe in 3 years to be ready to go. I mean, they're like a team that's drafting in the first overall, like Urban Meyer just was. You're going to get the best quarterback available in most circumstances because they've proven they know what to do with them.
Yeah. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've come to an end of a flight of another Tim May podcast. So put your tray tables back up in the lock position and stow your get your multimedia tablets out and start listening. But you know what? Awesome. Until next week, this is Tim May. We'll see you then.